So thank you everyone for joining us this morning. If you're on the West Coast, or good afternoon to those of you on the East Coast. This is the Lendesk webinar, How to Leverage Technology in Your Pursuit of Professional and Personal Harmony. For those of you who are joining that are perhaps slightly unfamiliar with Lendesk, we are a Canadian technology company, and we are on a mission to innovate and modernize the mortgage industry for Canadian mortgage professionals and lenders. Many of you on the line are familiar with our product Finmo or perhaps Lender Spotlight. Lendesk offers a suite of products, Finmo and Lender Spotlight being two of them, but we also offer gateway to our lenders and enterprise solutions. We have over 10,000 unique mortgage brokers that use our products, and our lender network is connected to over 240 lenders. We are SOC 2 compliant company, which is a fancy way of saying we adhere to the highest level of digital and data security. We are audited regularly and externally by a third party, and all of our data is encrypted and stored on Canadian servers. So with that, I wanted to introduce the folks on the line today. We have Christine Bowman, who probably needs no introduction, but she is a mortgage broker and also the co-owner of the Collective Mortgage Group. As well, not needing much of an introduction, Frances Hinojosa. She is a mortgage broker as well as the managing partner for Tribe Financial. We also have Paul von Martels on the line. He's the vice president at Equitable Bank, and he will be speaking in a little bit about how Equitable Bank and brokers are changing the game in the reverse mortgage lending space. I'm Christina Ray. I'm the marketing director here at Lendesk, and I'll be your host for today. We also have Greg Williamson on the line. He'll be silently in the background answering any Lendesk or Finmo specific questions you might have so that we can focus on the conversation at hand. With that, we will be doing a live Q&A at the end. I encourage you to stick around for it and get your questions in for Christine, Francis, or Paul. And Equitable Bank has kindly sponsored a couple little giveaways at the end for Q&A participants. So stick around, ask your questions, and perhaps win some goodies. This webinar is being recorded, so everyone who registered for this webinar will be receiving the recording in their inbox within 2 business days. All right, so with that, I'm actually now going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to say hello to Christine and Francis. Thank you both for joining me this morning.
Thank you for having us. And thank you to Equitable for sponsoring it as well.
Absolutely.
Good morning, everybody. And yes, thank you, Equitable Bank. Paul, we've had the pleasure to just finally meet the other day when we did our test run, and we had some great conversation. You guys have some stellar products. You guys are value partners of ours, and Lendesk as well. Thank you so much for having us. I think this is a really great conversation and very timely, considering the pivotal year that we've had in the last year.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's kick it off. So from my understanding, I always hear about mortgage professionals wanting to achieve an exceptional experience for their clients. Would love to hear from you both on why that's important to you, why delivering that exceptional client experience is so crucial, and what you're currently doing perhaps in your processes to help you achieve that. Francis, why don't we kick it off to you to start?
Well, I mean, the client experience is really the core aspect, I believe, and for any mortgage broker as to what we do every single day. I mean, the experience is what creates that relationship and that connection with the consumer. It's not the products necessarily we offer. It's not the rate that we offer. And really the experience really becomes, as a mortgage broker, your differentiating experience or your differentiating key that makes you unique to that consumer in front of you. You know, for me in my process, it's really important to have it drilled down and to have that consistent experience across the board. And why that consistency is so important is, you know, the way I've built my business over the years is by expanding relationships. And anyone that knows me in the industry, relationships are so important to me. They've been the, you know, the foundation of my business when I started as a mortgage specialist and even as a banker over 27 years ago. So, you know, the experience that I give one individual should have that consistency and that flow. It's very much the same that, you know, there's an expectation on the experience that you have in different aspects of our life. Like, for example, If I go into Starbucks, I know the experience that I'm going to achieve. So same thing when it comes to our firm at Tribe Financial, the experience for the client is so key for our business in terms of ensuring that we get repeat referrals, our clients are happy, it is streamlined, that we can maintain, again, those relationships also with our key lender partners, that the efficiencies are there, and that also as well, there's no surprises in the overall process down the road. And technology is a massive part in that. I mean, you know, Christine, when I started, we talked about this early on when we were noodling this the other day. I mean, I feel like I'm one of the oldies on the call, even though I don't want to call myself that. I mean, I started 27 years ago. So, you know, even myself, when I started 27 years ago, I didn't even have email. That was something that wasn't even around at the bank. I mean, I remember sending in documentation by internal mail, any of those that are old on the call as well. There was no such thing as electronic transmission. Lending systems were DOS based. And what's great today is we are in an age of an era where there's abundance and choice of technology out there, where you're able to utilize this, you know, exactly as this webinar says, to create that harmony in your business and create that experience to elevate that overall experience with the consumer. The basics today is mortgages and rates and products. What you have to ask yourself is, what else can you do to make sure that you are relevant today? And what else can you do to make sure that you're relevant moving forward?
Totally. I believe everything that Francis says is the exact same as for me. For me, I do business by referral, and I'm also in a small community. So I take a lot of pride in the process. I agree with the consistency. And I think at the end of the day, we're not really selling a rate or a product. I feel like our job is to guide the client through a journey. So we were kind of talking about this before, is the rate the most important thing? Why? Why do people feel like they need the biggest rate? Are we selling a specific product because we think that's the best thing for the client? Or are we giving them choice and giving them some education? And at the end of the day, I personally don't even think they're buying a specific house. They're buying a feeling, they're buying an experience, right? So it's important to me because I have this weird obsession with mortgages. Anybody who knows me well, I absolutely love mortgages. And also, I just think that at the end of the day, you want to be that person that they call for every single mortgage question that they have. So going back to Francis's point about relationship, you want to make sure that every part of your process is memorable.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And Francis, I love when you spoke about how the mortgage industry has changed. You know, you were around when email first started, and, you know, with Finmo, we have an intuitive document solution, but it wasn't always that case. Would love to hear from you both how your processes have changed over the years. I mean, this past year, especially, we've seen enough change to last a lifetime, but I think we can all agree that the emergence of technology in the mortgage space within the years prior to that, and even just learning and growing as brokers, what are you doing differently now in your processes?
I mean, for us at our firm is really wholeheartedly embracing the technology that is around us and making our lives easier with it. You know, the one thing about human beings, and, you know, even myself included, change is very hard. We get subconsciously so used to doing things a certain way. And, you know, to change your process or to feel and have that trust in technology that possibly it could do things to alleviate pressure in your own life, to automate your process. The past year has accelerated that forward. You know, I was talking with another thought leader outside of the industry. We both agreed. I mean, technology has always been there. It was there 2 years ago. The thing is, we weren't thrust into a situation where we had to use it. So to me, the positive that's come out of the last year of what we've been through is the fact that, you know, technology has been so important in any aspect of business to embrace in order for us to move forward. I do believe as the mortgage industry, can you imagine if we didn't have technology and we're in the middle of a pandemic? How would we even have webinars like this today? How could we possibly communicate with our clients? How could we arrange electronic signing? How could we have the flow there and perfected for us? So, you know, the past year has allowed us to embrace technology, but then there's the next level. is actually then embracing it and using it. And where can you find those, where can technology replace those pockets of time that could be of better use to you, both in your personal life and in your business? So, you know, with Finmo Lendesk, why we absolutely love it at our firm is, like you said, Christine, it's the intuitive technology. We're not afraid of technology replacing the broker, because, you know, it's going to be a while before it gets to the point that AI is there that can replace that human connection. And human beings are innately, to our DNA, relationship beings. We have a herd mentality. We crave relationships. And that's why when we talked the last year in the pandemic about the whole sense of isolation, you know, technology allowed us to not feel isolated, whereas technology also can make us feel connected. And that's what Lendesk and Finmo does for us. It creates that connection to the consumer without me having to physically be there to manage it. We can set up the protocols, we can set up the parameters, we can set up the auto responses, and we know safely that that deal and have confidence is going to move through, and also give the consumer the confidence on the other end at the level of expectations that they have today. Because we've moved so forward with technology, I feel anyone listening to this call as a mortgage broker, if you haven't embraced technology today, do so. Pick a system that you like, start integrating it in, because your consumers are going to expect technology to be part of the process moving forward.
I agree. And I think the best technology that you use is just one that you use. So you can have all of these big fancy processes, but if it's not actually being integrated into your daily life, then it's not really useful. And I feel like a few things. I think that technology is here to enhance my process, not replace the connection that I create. So I think that's important for me, just to be mindful of. I like templated everything. Things that are efficient are what I'm constantly striving for. How can I be more efficient? How can I maximize the touch points throughout my process? So one thing that I've noticed is that I struggle with anxiety. So for me, if anybody else on this call has ever struggled with anxiety, it's a constant loop of thoughts that are just like racing after each other. So for me, technology is one way that I can solve that problem. So when a client comes to me and they apply for a mortgage through my Lendesk platform, I know that they have an instant response. I know that I don't have to automatically get to them and think, did I call that person back? Did I do this? And especially as a mom, you've got 1,000 things, or parent, I should say, you've got 1,000 things on the go all the time, and your brain is firing on high alert at all times. So for me, it's not only about the client experience, but it's about creating a little bit more sanity in my mind, and also knowing that, again, the consistency that I don't have to follow up with them. So if a client applies to me through Finmo and I haven't heard back from them, my system's automatically going to follow up with them with templated emails that I know are consistent.
Love that. And I love how you say that technology shouldn't replace you, it should enhance you. I know as a marketer, adoption of technology is hard. There's a learning curve, but I sort of view technology, it's almost like an assistant or someone supporting your role. And it's just kind of like hiring a new person. There is that learning curve, getting them up to speed. You can anticipate that with technology, but once you adopt it and optimize it, you're away to the races.
And it's about being mindful of it. So for me, template, if I have a general rule, if you have to repeat something 3 times, it should be in a template.
Love that.
So if somebody's gonna ask you about purchase plus improvements, no problem. I have a thing with explainer videos. I have noticed years ago that I don't do well with myself on video, and clearly I lose my train of thought really easily. So I like to make really easy to digest explainer videos. So to me, that's a part of the technology that I embrace. Is somebody says, looking at some renovations, no problem. So just as far as some tangible tools of people that people could take away, I just say, your income to debt ratios are too high. Instead, obviously I talk too much. So instead of me going into a novel of an email, I just hyperlink it to income to debt ratio. They click on that, and then it's a little animated video about how income to debt ratios work. Same with credit ratio or credit reports. I just did one for payout penalties. So things that are common questions, just be really mindful. This question seems to come up a lot. And I think as brokers, our instinct is to be like, another client asking about rates. Okay, here we go. Or another client asking about credit report. But instead, lean into it. Say, how can I address these questions before they come up? And how can I be prepared of no problem? Here's some information. Choose to click on it if you'd like, and choose not to if you don't want to.
Absolutely. Love that. Yeah. As soon as you see something repeating or appearing 3 times, it's a pattern, and getting ahead of it. In marketing, that's, our first signal that we perhaps need a blog on this topic or something to proactively address the topic. So one of the things we wanted to discuss on this webinar is that personal and professional harmony. Wanted to ask you both, what does that balance look like to you, and is it achievable, especially in this day and age with working from home and in many ways working for yourself as a small business? What's your approach to it?
Well, I've learned over, decades of doing this, being a parent, being an entrepreneur in various businesses, there really isn't anything, and everyone says there's no such thing as balance. And I don't like to use the term balance. I believe that in your life, you have to create your harmony. And that's what I believe, because, harmony is much like music. There's a different tune, a different song for every single person. So, what I've done early on, and I keep doing this as I reflect and as I change and I grow, because it's not a one size fits all, depending on where you are and your level of your life or your business, is doing an audit on your life. So, it's figuring out, and I call it doing a joy audit. Figuring out what I did is figuring out all the stuff I love to do in my personal life, all the stuff I love to do in my business, all the stuff that I absolutely hate to do in both aspects, and anything that I don't like to do. What's great about technology, and that's here today, a lot of those tasks can be replaced now. So that creates more time in my day to focus on the things that do bring me joy. But it's really sticking true to your core values and just sticking true to your plan of what works for you. There is no secret formula. There is no such thing in balance, in my opinion. And it really is creating, like you said, creating that tune and that harmony by using technology to fill those gaps. Like something as simple as, for me, being both a mom and running a business and running a book of business, I'm a firm believer, right, running on agendas. Like my calendar on my phone is my Bible. I live and die by it. I will set things in there, both not only in my business and my personal life. I will set up reminders. There's alarms that go off on the phone throughout the day to remind me of certain things, so I don't get uber focused in one task and lose what my priorities are in something else. And again, I mean, this is something that's available today. I remember working on paper-based and paper agendas. I remember once losing my day timer and I thought I was absolutely going to have a heart attack. Stuff like that now is replaced with technology, and everything's so backed up on clouds that you really can automate your time in your day. But in order to find out your harmony, you have to do that audit. Like really take out the tasks that don't serve you value and use technology to replace those tasks.
Totally. I totally agree with Frances. And I think it's about auditing what gives you, like, managing your energy, what
Yes.
fills your bucket at the end of the day. When I think about harmony, I think it's just, like Frances said, so subjective. I think that it's like the pursuit. I was thinking about this last night, the pursuit of harmony. It's like the pursuit of happiness. And what does that feel like to you? And so I was trying to think back to, like, when do I feel like I'm in harmony? I'm not a very quiet or restful person. To me, that feels like putting my kids to bed. That moment of the day when you know that there's not much more you can achieve and that you can just be completely in that moment, that to me feels harmonious. So I just have to be really mindful of shutting my email off, making sure that I've eaten properly at that point and that every other part of my life feels harmonious in that moment. But I think it's just important to define what success feels like. I kind of tie in harmony with success, and how does that feel for us? Do you want to be $100 million producer that's just hammering out mortgages all day with this huge team? That's awesome. If you want to do that, then your harmony is going to be based around the activities that are going to lead you to that. If harmony for you is you can drop your kids off at school every day and then pick them up and be able to take certain specific vacations, then that's awesome too. So I think it's, for me personally, it's about creating our own structure, what feels right and what feels best to us, but also recognizing that what feels best to us is not necessarily what's going to feel best to others, and to be mindful of that. So when you see somebody still at the office that's working late, instead of saying, oh, there's that, where's his family? Then just be gracious, have some empathy. And I think when you start being gracious with others, when you start recognizing where others are at, you also turn that around and be a little bit more kind and gracious with yourself.
I love that. And I love how you have tangible reasons or ways that exude what harmony is to you, whether it's dropping your kids off at school or being there to put them to bed at night. I actually once had a friend who their definition of balance was not having to wake up to an alarm every morning. Not to say that they needed to sleep in till 11 a.m. every morning, but that just meant that they were operating their business on their own time. And so I think having those little checkpoints of what it means to you and in a very tangible way is key.
I'm the same as Frances. I schedule everything in. I think most moms can relate to like, what time is it? Oh my God. Okay, we're good. We're good. 1:30. Okay, we're good. You know,
Yeah.
And so if you've got that all scheduled in, and I've even gone as far as scheduling myself lunch. I have a hard time that I get into my zone and then I just completely forget to eat or forget to do other tasks. So now, and then I have like bedtime, do yoga. Now it's time to meditate. And do I follow them? Probably not. But I also think that it's hard when harmony seems like such a big thing to achieve. And like, what's the saying? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. So I think for me, I focus on the tasks. So what tasks can I do throughout my day to achieve that harmony or that success? For me, it's eating a healthy lunch, it's exercising, it's meditating at night, it's doing yoga, it's, you know, having specific conversations with my kids. And so those are my checkpoints. And going back to process, I think one of the biggest things I've taken from my 11 years in the business is when I first started, my mentor had encouraged me to write handwritten thank you cards. So I love gifting. I love sending people books. That's my thing because I love reading and I love just, I don't know, appreciating people. So every day, my goal is to write 2 handwritten thank you cards. That's my business goal. And when you're constantly looking for somebody to send a card to, especially in this COVID world, you're looking for things to be grateful for. So to me, my goal is, it sounds really silly and it's oversharing my personal stuff. That's what I do. But mine is to make my bed. That's been over a year. Make my bed as soon as I get up. Drink a glass of water as soon as I get up in the morning, take my vitamins. It's, you know what I mean? Like those small little tasks throughout the day are what create harmony for me, because I've been mindful of where I'm at through the day. What time of the day do I feel like my energy is at the lowest point? Perfect. I'm going to schedule 10 minutes in my calendar, 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock, I usually get a little bit grumpy because the coffee's wearing off. So at 10 o'clock, I go row for 10 minutes. And then you come back, perfect. It's not that I couldn't do it in the morning, but my energy is better served in other areas at specific times.
And you know what, Christine, I couldn't agree with you more. And once you're very clear of what your purpose is and what your whys are, it's very easy then to schedule those things into the day and they become non-negotiable. But you know, on the other side of it as well is technology can overrun you. And it's that thing is when do you stop technology or when do you shut it off? And again, it's doing little things in your life that will allow you to remove technology away. Like I really try hard. I have a reminder on my phone when it's a certain bedtime. My do not disturb hits every day at a certain time on my phone, turns on again at a certain time in the morning. You know, I have stuff scheduled and I have my icons and my notifications off on my phone because I find that I'm the type of personality I can get very highly distracted by something that's in front of me. So what can I do to ensure that I stay on task and course, that I'm staying committed to myself, to my purpose and my why throughout the day? And there's so many wonderful hacks now with technology that you can implement through notifications, turning them off, scheduling in stuff, doing reminders, having the technology, picking out what program you can best use in your business to automate tasks that are tedious or time consuming or energy suckers. Those are little things that are just going to give you pockets of time. Then you therefore create your harmony throughout your day and your purpose and your joy.
Totally. And I think being really clear with your time frame as well. I know we've talked about this before, but I recently started doing an out of office responder in the evenings and weekends. And it's not that I don't work evenings and weekends, but I've set the client expectation because I don't want them to think that I have to respond. And it's been a really interesting response from clients, or especially realtors. So it just says you can book a calendar with me here. If it's urgent, you can text me at this number. You can, you know, start an application here. And if I do respond to people, then they'll usually say, oh, thank you so much for getting back to me. I know it's the weekend, and they appreciate your time more rather than you just emailing back, or, you know, you're really setting client expectations. So I set the expectation for myself. As soon as I'm done for the day, my computer is done and I'm with my family. And same with weekends. However, setting the client expectation to me has been a huge game changer.
I love that. Yeah. You were mentioning about the email notifications or out of office settings, and I think I'm going to use that idea as well. Then it's
Or
just a
an
win-win if you
autoresponder
do
via
find the
text.
time.
What's
Pardon?
that? Oh, I was just going to say an autoresponder via text has saved me. I'll plug for Calendly if anybody doesn't use that, where if I miss a call, I just auto-respond via text, and then it has a link to my calendar. So instead of us playing phone tag, then I know they've been immediately responded to, and they can just book another time. And a lot of people do.
Autoresponder via text. I've never heard of that before.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Yes.
Oh, is that an app, or like, is that a Apple thing, or?
I think you can set them up in most phones.
Oh, okay. I need to
think
look
so.
into that.
You have an Apple, right, Christine? Because I do the same, and I have multiple different autoresponders depending on who's calling me. So
Yeah.
it will pop up.
Love
You can
that.
set up different ones depending on who's calling, and depending, typically you kind of know if it's a person there's maybe a certain response. If it's a person that you don't know, and again, it creates that pockets of time. A lot of the times people will even message me back, Christine, you probably have had this too. They'll either book the appointment or message you back saying, no problem, I'm free at this time. And it saves you then trying to scramble in your day and get distracted and not do the tasks at hand.
And for me, it goes back to that whole anxiety loop, because I know that they've been responded to. And I know that worst case scenario, they have access to my calendar and they can just book a spot right away. And some people prefer not to. That's totally okay. I've got two. I've got one that I'm on the other line, and then one I'm out of office. So after 6 o'clock, you're getting the out of office. On the weekend, you're getting the out of office. And they can book a spot in my calendar, no problem. But it sort of puts the action back to them.
Exactly.
Instead of feeling like I have a really heightened sense of urgency. So I keep my inbox like a zero inbox at the end of the day. So I'm constantly trying to get to the top of the pile. Another little hack that I've started, thanks to Dustin, I'll give a plug to him, is putting my contact card. So every person that calls me, I put a note on who they are. And even if it's just somebody and I missed the call and they went to the bank or whatever, I keep notes on all of that. So I can look at my phone at the end of the day and say, who didn't I respond to? But I use those autoresponder text messages all the time to follow up, to make sure that so at the end of every day, I know that each person who has contacted me has been responded to. And it's easier to track than just looking at this number or this list of numbers,
Brilliant. Love that. Okay.
What other hack do you have, Francis? I love Francis.
Oh, geez. I mean, it's just simple as hacks of how technology has changed. I mean, now working out, I don't need a personal trainer. I have the Peloton app. That's my personal trainer. I love to cook. I have an app for that. Like I love apps, and I love apps that serve their purpose in your life to make your life easier. Again, the autoresponders are a big thing for me. Setting your out of offices, making sure it's to do not disturb at night. I mean, before that, my phone would ping off the hook and it would drive me crazy. Wireless headphones. It may sound funny, but any parent out there and you're working from home, you need like a nice proper, like I've burned through two iPods because I love my wireless headphones because the noise cancellation, it allows me to stay focused.
I wear the over-the-ear ones and they cancel out my kids. And I can't tell you how many times people are like, is that your kids in the background? I can't even hear them. I'm like, I don't know, is it?
Yeah, no, it's just little things like that. And I guess, what's key, what I love, Christine, you talking about the autoresponders and the out of office and creating the clear expectation for the clients. Because with technology today, consumers expect a response, but they're not expecting necessarily a response from you. And I feel what has happened in the last year is people have become more graceful. I've noticed the difference in business in the last year is people are more graceful and appreciative and understanding of your time, but they still expect a response.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest thing, is they don't want to not hear from you and assume that it's a week and you're not going to respond. They appreciate a lot more if there is some sort of autoresponder and expectations given as to when you will communicate back with them, or how they can maybe, like you said, Christine, start an application or, book into your calendar. They just want some sort of response. And that's where technology can continue to create that memorable experience to your client, even from the start.
Absolutely. It can work for you.
One thing that I'll add about Finmo specifically is the two of the biggest changes we've made is as soon as the client submits their application, they get a templated email that says, here's what you can expect from the time frame. Here's a link to little videos that my assistants have introducing themselves. Here's a link to explainer videos on a bunch of different things. And here's a time frame. Here's how you can create your CRA documents or my account or whatever it is. But what I love the most is the smart docs, because then not the burden, but the task has been assigned to the client right away. So, I mean, we still usually have a couple things to touch up, but now instead of we're waiting for you to review everything and then send a list of docs, they have an instant action that they feel like they get to do. And it's been a huge, huge piece for the client experience.
Yeah. The perception is that you're always working for them. And then on your end, you just get that extra time back in your day. And the process is a lot smoother.
Christine, I couldn't agree more. I mean, that is the life for us too, as well as our firm. That has been the game changer in our business, is the smart doc actions and putting the onus on the clientele. Because what I've found through conversations with other brokers and agents throughout the industry, it's having that hesitation to ask for clients for all documents up front. And to be quite honest, in this day and age, with mortgages being so complex and the choices to be so plentiful, you really do need the full diagnosis. You need the full file. You need every single piece of the puzzle. The analogy that I will always tell clients when I'm doing their application is I need everything up, much the same as you going to a doctor. You can't go to a doctor and say, you know what, I don't feel well, prescribe something, fix me. What they'll do is they'll send you out and get x-rays and blood work, and they'll want to know what's going on. Your paperwork, client, is my x-rays and blood work. That way I'm not missing any pieces of the puzzle. But getting that autoresponder, I am telling every single application that I've ever done now through Finmo Lendesk, I've never once gotten a pushback from any client. I get exactly all the documents uploaded up front, which has been a game changer.
Totally. And I'm the same, like, no, if you don't have full document package to me, I want job letter, pay stub, tax returns. Otherwise, what's the point of the conversation? You know what I mean?
Well, I said this to a client. I said, without the stuff, I am not doing my best work for you, and I'm not being of service.
Sure.
And I always want to make sure I'm putting your best interest to heart. And if I don't have the stuff, I don't feel I'm properly serving you. So therefore I can't really proceed.
Totally. And they can upload it directly from their phone or whatever's best for them. There's just so many ways that we can simplify it from the consumer's end. I agree. And the automatic follow-ups. So not only do they automatically have an action item that if they don't do it, it's automatically going to follow up with them every few days or whatever you set it as. It's phenomenal how much time it saved us. And honestly, it's not even just the time it saved us, it's how much better we are as brokers, how much better we are at serving our clients. Because there's just no way to be able to do that with every single client when you get to a certain amount of people applying at a time,
And it's funny, Christine, Paul just put a comment in there, docs up front, lender's dream. I'll tie in there. It's also creating that exceptional experience with your lender partners. Totally. I mean, my relationships with my clients are super important, but what's even more important, or just as important, is my relationships with my lenders. I want to make their job as easy as possible. And agents, brokers listening to this call, I'll tell you a little secret, and Paul, you can chime in. You make their lives easier, and they see that consistency of efficiency. They see that consistency of smooth transition. You become top of the pile to them. You end up getting superior service from your lenders, which in turn allows you to give superior service to your clients at the end.
It's so hard from a lender's perspective of, okay, well, if they make $50,000 a year, if you don't have the documentation, how do you know? And so what I always say to people is if they're looking just to sort of run numbers, no problem. What we have actually is our Finmo calculators, which I've built into my website. So if you want to just play around with numbers and you want to know if you make $50,000 a year and you have this amount, then what do you qualify for? No problem. You can use my calculators all day long and see but if you want an actual pre-approval, then let me know. And some people actually just want to play with the calculators. So that's okay too. But I love that there's sort of a distinction. It's not just tell me how much you make. I'm going to spit something out that you can give to your realtor. It's, are you actually going to qualify for that mortgage when you write an offer on it?
Love that. Yeah. And it's giving them a choice and setting the expectation on what the end result will be. If they're just playing around with calculators, they're just getting a rough number versus when they work directly with you.
I'm going to do one more plug because I know we're running out of time. One of the things that I love with Lender Spotlight as well is the comparison stuff. I had no idea that it did that, and I've been doing comparisons for people for years. And so anybody that's on the call who doesn't have an update on Lender Spotlight, you need to do training. Their trainers are amazing. For me personally, I think there's a science behind choosing the right product for your long-term plan rather than just shopping around for a rate. People come to brokers because they want choice. They want to be informed. They want to feel like they're making the right decision. So I've always personally given people 3 choices: a 5-year fixed, 5-year variable, or whatever we make a plan. So whatever fits what they're looking for. But Lender Spotlight makes it so much easier to do it now. And you would be shocked at how many people choose a higher rate for a better product. When you've explained it to them. And then if they've chosen a higher rate, then next time somebody throws at here's this, or they see something online, they're far more inclined to feel confident with their decision because you're educating them on the cost of borrowing rather than just focusing on what the rate is going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry, Francis. Just going to say the compare feature has been hugely popular with brokers.
No, you know what, Christine, I was saying that I've been using for years, the best rate with the mortgage will come with the best solution. That's what it is, right? Like it's what's the best price for a car? Well, what kind of vehicle do you need? Right? It's the same sort of analogy when it comes to anything you purchase. The price associated to whatever the solution is going to be the best value to you. But I couldn't be even, I so agree with everything you're saying about Lender Spotlight. This is where, as a firm, it's taken us as well to the next level. For years, we've been running on Excel spreadsheets at our firm. And what we would do in the past before Lender Spotlight is actually provide to all our agents at a firm an Excel spreadsheet with all the different rates and terms, with all the different lenders that they would still have to fish through over and above that to figure out suitability. It was just telling you rate. And suitability is so important. Once you know the suitability of the product, you're also going to be able to determine, does it even fit with the actual lender? Do they have the policies to meet those client specific needs? So again, it's not just is the product suitable, but are the policies at the specific lender? And Lender Spotlight will again create so much time in your day, not having to dig through, because it will narrow that funnel down to a point where you only have a few lenders possibly left, which makes the choice a lot easier to the consumer and allows you to explain to the consumer as to why those choices are relevant.
And on the flip side too, going back to respecting lender partnerships. I mean, if you talk to lenders, and I'm sure Paul can kind of speak to that, I think a lot of the declines or the lacking of efficiency is probably documentation not matching the submission, which we can address with the FINMO upfront, and not knowing the lender's policy. So there's nothing worse in a busy time than a lender getting all the way through and then, oh, we don't take child tax credit, which is like the #1 question on social platforms, it seems like. Or, the minimum square footage is X amount, or we don't use this amount for heat. So I happen to have a really bizarre brain for lender underwriting policies. It's been like this weird obsession that I have, but having a resource like Lender Spotlight, where you can actually run every single scenario. Oh, shoot, it doesn't fit with this. What are the things I could be looking for? Is it preserved wood foundation, which is something in our area? And, is it going to AVM? Like there's so many different things that you can look for. And instead of having to call the BDM, you can be accurate in your submission, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Yeah. And with the compare feature, you're able to show that to your client in a professional branded way. And they can, I'm not surprised that they often might choose a higher rate because you can then see the policies side by side and realize what's the best package overall. If you don't mind, I see some questions coming through. So everyone, please keep your questions coming for Francis and Christine. We'll get to them very shortly. But I'd love to turn it over to Paul to hear a little bit about reverse mortgages. So with that, I'm going to share my screen again.
Thank you, Christina. And I guess good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I have to laugh here, and I don't want to get too distracted, but we're talking about technology and working from home. Well, I, like many people, have had a lot of internet issues working from home over the last 12 months. And I've been on our service provider to improve the service. And what would happen today? Well, they've all come out to replace the internet cable lines as I'm doing a webinar. So what are the odds of that happening now? But fortunately, tethering allows me to continue to participate. So again, thank you everyone. And Francis, Christine, what wonderful conversation. We talk about comparison and something that we see a lot in the mortgage space. And, you know, it always brings up this quote that I love so much. And it's that comparison is the thief of joy. And, you know, our challenge in the broker space, like, let's agree, we all thrive off of comparison. We thrive off of encouraging consumers to realize that there are options beyond the big banks. But then as soon as we sort of have that first engagement with them, we quickly have to shift their mindset from comparison to best fit mortgage. And that's the challenge, right? But I think as an industry, you know, we are doing an excellent job. Anyways, reverse mortgages. So as many of you may know, Equitable launched a reverse mortgage product a few years ago. And little did we know at the time that the tailwinds supporting this product's growth would gust, I guess, because of a global pandemic. But here we are. Look, it's a common belief of many that the reverse mortgage market in Canada is small. And sure, the industry only originated, call it about 900 million or so last year. And it's growing at a very fast pace. And I'll say that it's growing at an exceptionally fast pace for really three reasons. The first is that, and this is an interesting stat for many of you who are in this business, reverse mortgages, or are thinking about it. Reverse mortgage penetration in Canada is exceptionally low. 0.5% of eligible households, give or take, have a reverse mortgage. And you compare that to about 4% in the UK and about 2% in Australia. So that would mean, you know, for those kind of armchair mathematicians, that, you know, it's very reasonable for the Canadian reverse mortgage market to grow by 4 to 8 times over the next, call it 10 years. So from, call it 900 million a year to 7 to 8 billion. And of course, for those of us that are getting into this business, you'd much rather get in at the basement and sort of, you know, be a part of this industry from the earlier days rather than wait until, you know, this industry is very mature. So again, low levels of penetration, we expect to see that number significantly grow over the coming years. The second is that Canadians over the age of 65, as this slide shares, you know, is a large part of the demographic in Canada. So almost 10 million Canadians actually don't have access to products that allow them to access their home equity. And so oddly enough, too, of this demographic, roughly 75% of them are homeowners. And then if you recognize that many of them are located in markets like Vancouver, Toronto, Montreal, you know, where average home prices are easily over $1 million, there is a huge amount of home equity that's tied up and that there is no way to access it other than a sale. And then finally, and super important, is that now there's competition from a lender standpoint in this product. You know, not to suggest that others haven't done a good job incorporating this product, but there's a lot of innovation and change that Equitable has brought as a part of, you know, coming to this market. Next slide, please, Christina. So, you know, biases about this product are plenty. We get it. And I think that many are misguided biases. And I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that Equitable Bank has done over the last few years to address these concerns. The first is that we've led the downward pressure on interest rates. And for those in the market and are seeing this, you'd know that that's true. When we got in a few years ago, interest rates were in the mid 7s. Now, you know, we've just recently had to tick rates up modestly, but I think our lowest rate today is 3.69, for example. We've got 2 loan to value schedules so that we can pass savings on to borrowers if they choose to take lower LTVs. So another example of innovation. Second, the bank will own my home. Just completely untrue. In Canada, reverse mortgage lenders can only register a mortgage charge, and really only has recourse to the fair market value of that property. So what that means is, imagine a situation where, fast forward a number of years, mortgage value is 1.2, home value is 1. Equitable only has recourse to the property at 1 million, and that shortfall of 200 unfortunately gets eaten by the bank. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen, but there is a lot of downside protection for borrowers. We've reduced prepayment charges, because this is another very common concern about the product. Getting into a reverse mortgage means that if I have a change in my life unexpectedly, that I'm going to have a very punitive prepayment charge. We've done a lot to reduce those costs. Actually, we've reduced them by 50% on average over the first 3 years. So 5 for 3 months interest if you're breaking in years 1, 2, and 3, and then 3 months on. And likewise, there are many options to prepay all of the interest each month and some of the principal. And if the last borrower passes, I know this sounds a bit morbid, but if the last borrower passes, the entire prepayment charge is waived. And then finally, EQB has a lot of online portals and all the technology that Francis and Christine have been talking about, but all the technology that a client would expect today when they take out a mortgage. Okay, next slide, please. So, Equitable continues to work very hard with its broker partners to grow this market. Like, we see there being a lot of value here for brokers, for lenders like ourselves. And we really want to encourage engagement and participation within the broker community. With our lower rates, lower prepayment charges, we save clients commonly tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, over the course of a reverse mortgage. Our product is flexible. It offers something for everyone. And finally, Equitable's scale as a bank means that in a lot of ways it can provide excellent service to all of the parties that are involved in the transaction. An example of that would be that we pay 200 basis points of broker commission on reverse mortgage transactions. And finally, if you have any questions, I'd encourage you or ask you please to reach out to your Equitable Bank business development manager. I will include the email address to the reverse mortgage team in the chat. And I just wanted to say thank you, everyone, for joining us this afternoon. Thank you to Lendesk for hosting this wonderful session.
Thanks, Paul. That was great. I see some questions popping in, so I'm sure some folks have some questions on the line about that. As I alluded to at the beginning of this presentation, Equitable has kindly sponsored a couple giveaways or goodies. And so for the first few that can send a comment through, will win a Tim Hortons coffee gift card. We'd love to hear from you what your biggest takeaway or what you're going to implement now in your life due to these hacks that we've all just heard about. Please put them in the chat or the Q&A, and you could win a Tim Hortons gift card. I know
people are doing that. Can I just say something from the broker's perspective?
Yeah.
Like, how amazing of an opportunity. First of all, am I the only one who didn't know you get paid that much for reverse mortgages? That's phenomenal. Why is everybody not doing this? And we worry about technology replacing brokers. How many times have we said that brokers have become obsolete? These kind of products are so amazing that these are what differentiate us, right? So I think that there's just such a huge opportunity there with reverse mortgages.
I mean, Christine, it's funny that you say that comment. I was around when ATM machines were put in bank branches. And I remember when ATM machines, and everyone swore up and down it's going to replace everyone inside the branch. And then came along online banking, and it's going to replace the infrastructure. And yes, eventually they're closing some more branches, but there are still human experience behind it. And it goes back to the belief that I believe technology there is to enhance the experience, not to replace the personal one-on-one experience that you can give to your consumer.
Totally. And the more tools we can have to help people, there's just such a huge segment of people with this reverse mortgage opportunity.
Brilliant. So I see a lot of folks entering their comments or their takeaways into the chat, which the panelists can see. Looks like the text autoresponder seems to be the winner. Grace mentions they are buying an experience, not a house. I love that. Collins mentions Manulife's reverse mortgage products in the 90s saved my parents. Karen mentions, I will be looking into setting up autoresponder and do not disturb to help stay focused.
I'll put my email in the chat. If anybody wants to email me, I'll send you my templates.
Nice, thank you. That's awesome. Christina, there's a couple of questions for Francis and Christine.
Awesome. Yeah.
I think. So do you want me to shoot them at you now?
Go for it, Greg.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I'm not sure which one of you will have, but either. When you say, Trish is asking, when you say text auto responses, do you mean text replacement where it types in a message when you input a series of letters, or is there an actual auto response?
Great question. I do both. So again, for maximizing efficiency, if you can have something, so I think what she's referring to is, for example, somebody wants to come to my office. I can type 000, and then it says, my office is located, blah, 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 and then a link to the map. One little tip that I actually heard, I'll kind of divert from that question too, is that if you ask Siri a question, they're not necessarily using Google. So from what I hear, they're using Yelp. So I put all my contact on Yelp and I sort of emphasize that. And then so if people ask Siri, who's the best mortgage broker, then hopefully I come up. So yeah, the two different ones are, I agree, maximizing efficiency. If somebody wants to apply and you've got a link and you're going to be doing anything from your phone, there's one called Text Responder, I believe, that creates bigger ones. But for me, it's like kind of an out of office responder. So I use both, but the one just says I'm on the other line. Here's a link to my Calendly. So it's, I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I'll add a little bit to this too, just because I've actually used that text replacement. Somebody taught me this trick and it's really quite good. And you put a dot and then a word that will actually help you remember. I have tons of these text replacements. So for example, if somebody says, hey, my realtor said, call me, call you, and I want to just send them here's how you get started. And it's, it's a longer message. I just type in dot, like a period, and blank, the name of our thing. So that, because usually when you're typing, you don't have a period and a word right beside each other.
Good one.
So it actually allows me to have a lot more things I can remember, and then boom, gives me the text replacement and goes. But I did not know about this auto response thing. Like, I'm going to call you now and say, walk me through the thing. How the hell do you do that? So that
The other
is
thing
like
with my website, if anybody needs website help, Jackson Middleton is the best ever. And most of my blog postings are all hidden, but my emails are just all hyperlinked. So that to me, so it's similar to the text expander. It's just not a huge novel. And I find it's amazing. And it also helps your algorithms if they're constantly linking on your website and it's not bogged down with all the different titles. But anytime you have something that you repeat often, put it into a template, put it in a blog, and then just be able to have the information there if they want to see it, but not have to read through 100 different things if they don't.
That's great.
And,
sorry. Go ahead.
I'll throw in there. I mean, and if anyone's sitting on the call, okay, but still, how do you set it up? What I love about this day and age is Google it. That's what I do a lot. If I need to figure out how to set up something on my phone, if I want to know any information, that is one thing that I love about the abundance of information today. You can Google any question and it's gonna link you to a step-by-step process or a video of how to actually set things up on your specific phone or your specific computer.
Great. Hey, Francis, I have a question for you from the audience. Christina, you can go in as well, I think, but which platform do you use for e-signing? So that's one specific question, but more importantly, I think what would be interesting for the audience is, describe the client signing process in a pandemic. I mean, I think Christine, I think as I recall, and I may be wrong, but you prided yourself on doing a lot of people come to your office and do all that stuff. As I remember, that's part of what you were, and like, bam, okay, I got to change that. So, how are you doing the simplify, that getting all the darn paperwork all signed up and doing everything, and, whatever technology you might use? So both of you should
Well,
answer. I forgot, Christine, that was a big deal for you, and it would have been a big shift. So yeah.
I mean, for us, for myself personally, and most of the members at our firm, it wasn't a massive shift with the pandemic switch over to signing in to go electronic, because our firm was very electronic to begin with. I mean, I implemented e-signing, I don't even remember when, a few years ago, well before this. And what I started to do with consumers, I started to realize is I gave them choice. So when it came to the point in time of actually, okay, now we're at the point in time in the process that we talked about, it's time to go through all the paperwork and sign it. What works best for you? Because I'm a firm believer in, yes, creating expectations, but also creating those expectations of what's going to drive the best experience for the consumer. And what I found very interesting is most clients do not want you coming to their home, nor do they want to go to your office. And most of us think that that's the case. Christine, we were talking about this, Christina and Christine and Paul, when we did that, when we were doing the roundabout riffing. What do you do most when you have somebody, if someone's going to come to your home, okay, you got a supplier, you have an appointment, someone's coming to your home, what's the first thing everyone does? Tidies up their home. You're taking time away from their life. You're creating more work for them, for you to actually show up at their home, and people don't want you there. People are so used to electronic signing today, and they even more so, I could tell you years ago, that it's not that big of a deal. It's very common practice. Prior to this, our firm used Sign Now. Post this now, I mean, Greg, we're implementing the FinMo and the Lendesk e-signing system, which we can't even tell you how excited we are, because I am minimizing the amount of software and programs I have to use. It's now getting more and more where everything is drilling down, which is what I want in my firm and what I expect to be a high-performing, successful broker. I want as much jam-packed into one program to log into to do everything I need to do, because that was very much the case of the experience that I had with the bank. And what's interesting is, as brokers today, we have the ability to elevate the experience beyond what a major bank does on the street and their mortgage specialists, because a lot of them don't implement e-signing. A lot of them still want their clientele to drop off, or even, if you could believe it, fax paperwork. They don't take things as PDF because they don't feel it's secure. One of my neighbors is actually the head of technology at one of the major banks, and we were joking about this. I said to him, like, dude, when are you going to get on when are you getting on the train and allow emails to be sent? 1984 called, they want their fax back. Look, this is crazy and ridiculous. So we do have an opportunity here as mortgage brokers to start embracing electronic signing, embracing the technology that is out there to elevate, again, that experience to the consumer on the other end.
I use Sign Now as well. And actually, I'm just getting up and running with Blue Root. So they've got an e-signing program in there. And again, I think whatever signing platform you actually use is going to be the best one for you. Anyone going paperless, I'm old school, so everything I do is a little bit more old fashioned. And I loved paper files. I loved having them all stacked up. I'd get in my office in the morning and I have my stack of each things that needed to be done. And it only takes thinking you misplaced a file or thinking that you've misplaced a document till anyone who's going to also struggles with anxiety to know the complete overwhelm of, like, what do I do? It's gone. I can't call the client back. So for me, it was a hard move to go to paperless. But when I did, now it's just a search function. It's so phenomenal, especially when you've got a team. It only makes sense to go paperless. My signing, again, I'm all about education and hyperlinking everything. So my signing process, I do it through Sign Now, but I also have created my own sort of version of the commitment that I send prior to sending the link. So I leave it up to the client. We can do Zoom, we can have a phone call, but I also have it where I've laid it out in layman terms. Here's what your rate is. Here's what your prepayment options are. Here's a link to your online portal and how you can, do this. Here's a video I made on a property tax adjustment. So you're going to have to expect this at closing. How's your interest compounded? Is it semi-annually? Here's a link so that it explains that to you. So it just sort of does a general recap. If it's, let's just say, an MCAP mortgage and they've got a home plan that we need to follow up with within 6 months, we put it into our program so that we know that it's going to follow up with them. We send MPP a little bit separately, but I think it's important to either have the conversation with the client and go, line item by line item, but also have that in writing for them, because it's so much information. I always say it's like trying to drink from a fire hose, and really they're going to look at, to be honest, a lot of it's for me, because when you've completely messed something up, like putting in the wrong down payment or something like that, mistakes happen over 11 years. You want to make sure that everything is completely triple checked when they're signing. I also have a bit of a different process with my signing packages. They're signed prior to removing subjects. So for me, I want all documents in, everything signed off, and signed document package prior to the client's removing subjects. So it kind of puts that emphasis and not necessarily the pressure back on the client, but I always say to them, I want you to ensure that you're comfortable with the mortgage product that you're getting into. So we wrap it all up, we sign everything, and then they remove their subjects, and then it's just smooth sailing. Like, knock on wood, but I've never had a client in 11 years call me after subjects have been removed and say, I got a better rate from the bank. Keep in mind, I'm in a small town, so a little bit different. But for me, it's just about being really mindful of where they're at in the process. So if it's wrapped up to them, then it's wrapped up. Like, even if rates drop prior to closing, very rarely do our clients call and say, can we get a lower rate? It's really just, keeping it condensed in that portion of the process.
Hey, I see Paul has his hand up, but one quick thing I just want to add to the e-signing thing then, Paul, and then we'll go on to that. And I realize, Christina, too, we're at the top of the hour. People stay as long as you like. We're going to keep answering questions, or, do we can get as much value out of these amazing ladies as we can. And we have a recording, right, Christina? Because people are asking about that. So we're going to share the recording. One more thing about that before people have to drop off. There's been a lot of really great things for Francis and Christine and Paul. Are we able to, after the webinar, capture all the questions and all the comments and share it with our panelists?
Absolutely. I think we
Okay.
definitely should be doing
So
that.
thank you for all of that. I know there's coffee cards coming, so we've got that. But also, guys, you're going to be getting so many great bouquets from everybody. I want to make sure you see them all. So we're going to share that with our panelists. So, but quickly on the e-signing. Finmo has OneSpan, and we recognize one of the big limitations is no ability to do templates. We're working so hard with them to try to get that, but that's one of the limitations. However, on the flip side of that, with the new compliance feature that's going to be released with our direct to lender submission, it essentially gets compliance done for you. So basically all of your e-sign documents that you need will just automatically be put into your compliance area, so that it's that step is done for you. So I mean, there is some offset to do some of that. And I realize DocuSign and I think SignNow is great. I like them too. DocuSign is really coming after everybody for price. So, it might be a good time to be thinking about that if you were, but that was the piece, from the technical side. So Paul has got his hand up. So let's
look, I have a bit of a different perspective to layer onto this e-sign conversation, because it's certainly a hot topic, or has been a hot topic going through the pandemic. Now they're drilling into my house. We've been using OneSpan. We are actually in the midst of transitioning over to DocuSign, for what that's worth. But more interestingly, last summer we did a quick study, and we found that comparing clients or commitments that were using e-sign versus the traditional paper-based method, we did a side-by-side study. Don't have the data right in front of me, but I directionally remember. Electronically signed documents came back on average 30% faster, and there was something like a 15% higher sign back ratio. Now, those two sort of steps are correlated. But I mean, listen, multiply your portfolio by, or the originations that you did last year without electronic signature, and, add 10% to that. I mean, it's a very material number over the course of a year. So, and surprisingly, reverse mortgage clients are just as likely to use electronic signature as traditional mortgage clients. So, every now and again, we run into a few that don't have email addresses, but and then we're back to the traditional approach, but that's okay.
Yeah, great. That's a good comment. Thank you, Paul. Question for, I think, Christine, probably. I can't remember, but which platform do you shoot your short little videos on?
Oh, I do them through a company called Fiverr. So I write the scripts, and then I have someone animate them. So yeah, it was years ago after trying to figure out video, I kind of created an animated character, and then that character carries through each of my videos and explains things.
Nice.
So
That's
I
so
usually write
cool.
the script and then I just put them on my website.
I will say for those here, the other thing that I've learned from some other brokers is there's a product called Loom, Loom, which is free Google plugin. And in the pandemic, particularly, I've heard they record their going over the commitment, the MPP, like record that, and then send that to the customer so the customer can, they can grab a glass of wine and go through everything together and go and look over the commitments, rewind it, kind of do all, and apparently they get really good customer feedback on that. So might be another thing for people to look into.
I'll share my opinion. I'm a little too opinionated, but I have a hard time with the personal videos, to be honest. Some of them are amazing, but
Yeah.
I really like authenticity in people. And so when I was trying